Hey everyone, as we approach Amonkhet, it's about time we finished our recap of the Kaladesh / Aether Revolt story. If you missed part 1 of our lore recap, you can check that out right here by clicking the link on the screen. In this video, we're going to catch you all up on the happenings on Kaladesh by summarizing the entire Aether Revolt story for you in a single video. I know, super convenient. If you enjoyed the video and want more lore videos like these, be sure to hit that like button, it helps out a lot. We pick up within the dead of night, wherein Yahenni's short life is coming to an end. Aetherborn are characteristically short-lived, and having a sort of sixth sense telling them when their time is soon. And the worst part is, due to the upheaval surrounding the Inventors Fair, Yahenni hasn't been able to arrange a penultimate party, a traditional celebration intended as a sort of grand finale to the short, hedonistic life of an Aetherborn. So Yahenni is wandering the city, desperately searching for anyone to be with them in their final moments. They finally see their caterer, who is being brutalized by a consulate enforcer regarding some graffiti he's just completed. Desperate to save both their own life and the life of their friend, Yahenni awakens to a power that few Aetherborn possess, the ability to drain the essence of other living beings. The ability implies a sort of moral quandary as to whether it's right to take another's life to prolong one's own, but in the moment, Yahenni decides one consulate officer is an acceptable loss to save their friend and give themselves just a few more days of existence. Resolved to put their draining powers to use helping the renegades, Yahenni approaches Gonti in search of Pia and Chandra Nalaar. Gonti agrees to point Yahenni in the renegades' direction under one condition. Yahenni must agree to warn the renegades of an impending consulate attack, which Gonti will then, of course, arrange. Gonti's intent is to shock the renegades into action, allowing Gonti to muster an Aetherborn force against the consulate, while ensuring they'll have backup. Yahenni reluctantly agrees to Gonti's terms, meets up with the Gatewatch, and helps them fend off the very attack that Gonti arranged. The Gatewatch, for their part, are continuing to evade consulate detection as best they can while coming up with a plan of action, which we see progress in quiet moments. Gideon is at a bit of a moral impasse. He and his allies are nominally on Kaladesh to unravel Tezzeret's plans, but now it's turned into a fight against the consulate, and Gideon wonders whether they might be overstepping their bounds. Gideon tries to talk it out with Chandra. However, regardless of the Gatewatch's obligations and self-imposed boundaries, the fight against the consulate is quite personal for her. After all, they killed her father, imprisoned and tortured her mother, and brought her so close to death that her planeswalker spark ignited. Chandra is insistent that the Gatewatch should be helping her and by extension the Renegades, if not as formal protectors of any kind, then at least as her friends. Gideon, still a bit conflicted, convinces Chandra that their main focus should still be Tezzeret, and he concedes that working with the Renegades will at least be helpful towards the cause. What a pushover. Gideon also has a brief verbal scuffle with Liliana. He insists that the Gatewatch should avoid killing anyone at all costs. Liliana, naturally, isn't convinced. She also divulges that she has something of a personal grudge against Tezzeret, but they can't linger on that too long because Saheeli, who is working with the Gatewatch and the Renegades in the wake of the Inventors Fair, has brought new information. Her investment in the situation is that her inventor friend Rashmi was captured by the consulate when the Inventors Fair came to its abrupt end. Saheeli and the Gatewatch alike, as planeswalkers, recognize the danger posed by Rashmi's experimental teleportation technology, both within Kaladesh and beyond, should have fallen to the wrong hands, and, well, Tezzeret's aren't exactly the right hands, almost couldn't find worse hands, almost. Speaking of which, Breakthrough covers Rashmi's situation. She and a bunch of other inventors captured after the fair are now being worked to the bone by Tezzeret to perfect Rashmi's portal technology. Tezzeret's constant derision and the ruthlessness with which the other inventors and consulate functionaries alike are released from their duties begins to wear on Rashmi. Despite all of that, her pride is enough to keep her going, and she eventually gets something almost working on a larger scale. Rashmi performs one last test, but something goes terribly wrong. This new planar bridge malfunctions, and Rashmi experiences just for a moment the full extent of the Blind Eternities. She sees entire other worlds, places she somehow felt she was always aware of but never imagined she could ever see. She understands in an instant her portal works by passing through other worlds beyond Kaladesh. Just then, the localized interplanar snarl ends and Rashmi is hurled back out into the lab even as Tezzeret enters. He's unimpressed by Rashmi's seemingly disheveled state, but she tries to explain the significance of what she's seen. Unfortunately for her, Tezzeret is supremely condescending, and also, unbeknownst to her, a planeswalker, so all of this is old news to him. Tezzeret is furious that thanks to the malfunction, a fuse is blown and the machine isn't quite complete. Meanwhile, Rashmi realizes that she has to destroy this machine before Tezzeret can abuse it to whatever nefarious ends he has in mind. Under the guise of repairing the planar bridge, Rashmi sabotages it. Knowing Tezzeret's pride would drive him to operate the bridge personally, she set it up to drop its payload within the room. When this actually happens, the test payload breaks the window of the spire where Rashmi and her bridge are being held. This allows Rashmi to rappel down to street level. There she's picked up by Saheeli and the Gatewatch and formally introduced into the Renegade movement. Next up is Revolution Begins. Pia convinces Chandra to give an improvised speech to an audience of potential allies in an attempt to motivate them in a way Pia herself has not. The audience has been depressed into inaction by the consulate's recent audacity, and they react with hostility to Chandra's accusatory tone. However, her speech does attract the attention of one powerful figure, Gonti. Chandra, naturally, is suspicious of Gonti. After all, he just recently seemed to have sold them out to the consulate. However, Gonti explains their intent, not to jeopardize the renegades, but to spur them into action. Furthermore, Chandra is forced to admit that they succeeded in that respect. Gonti offers to arm the renegades to act, and they accept. Empowered by Gonti's generosity, the renegades are able to take the central ether hub of Gyrapur. Meanwhile, Rashmi is hard at work on the reason why they needed the ether hub to begin with. The renegades are constructing a massive skyship called the Tezzeret's Ruin, with which they intend to assault the consulate's spire and destroy the planar bridge. In the process of finishing up her work, Rashmi comes to the realization that the ship was originally designed by Kiran Nalaar. To honor his memory, she suggests a new name and christens the ship as the Heart of Kiran. This brings us to Burn. The consulate upper management, mainly Tezzeret, are not happy that the renegades took the ether hub. However, Dovin Bond details a quite extensive tactical plan to take back the hub from the renegades currently holed up there. To add an extra guarantee that the Gatewatch won't be able to effectively intervene, Tezzeret makes one addition to the plan. He sends Baral to harass the Nalaars and bait them, mainly Chandra, away from the hub. Meanwhile, Gideon and Chandra have something of a heart-to-heart about their various traumas. Being back on Kaladesh and reunited with her mother has given Chandra a lot to think about. They hug it out, and Nissa approaches, making Chandra incredibly flustered. But there's no time to dwell on that because someone outside is calling Chandra out. It's Baral, just as planned out by Tezzeret, and his presence is immediately having the intended effect. Chandra pursues, just as planned. Gideon recognizes the likelihood of this being a trap. However, Nissa realizes that even knowing it's a trap wouldn't stop Chandra and follows her to provide backup. Baral continues to hurl his verbal barbs at Chandra, going through the full gruesome detail of how he utterly broke apart her family all those years ago. Chandra and Nissa's combined power is enough to back Baral into a corner, but he served his purpose, and Dovin Bond comes by to pick him up and get him out of there. And sure enough, Baral created enough of a diversion, and the rest of Dovin's plan was solid enough that the consulate forces were able to take back the ether hub. But Chandra isn't done with Baral, and she continues to pursue, so desperate to utterly destroy him that she nearly creates a blaze so massive it would threaten her own life, along with those around her. Nissa manages to talk Chandra down, quite possibly saving her life. And while the consulate now has the upper hand, not all is lost. The things Baral shouted at Chandra also happened to be extremely illegal, and Dovin takes his shouted confessions as sufficient evidence to arrest Baral and strip him of his position. The Gatewatch and the Renegades escaped the hub aboard the Heart of Kiran. They were, at least, able to get enough ether from the hub to fuel the ship. Despite their losses, the skies over Gyrapur follows the Renegades as they plan out their attack on the planar bridge. Jace recruits Sky Pirate Kari Zev to help secure additional ether for the Renegades since they've lost the hub. However, with Sky Sovereign, the consulate flagship in the sky, actually delivering that ether is another story. Even the Derby Crows, a society of skyship inventors with which Kari is friendly, are unable to break through without more ships. This gives Jace an idea. Jace's idea is to disrupt the consulate formations by creating the illusion that the Derby Crows' fleet is much bigger than it actually is. An initial non-illusionary assault succeeds at breaking up the consulate ships, and causing quite a bit of mayhem in the process. However, despite their efforts, Sky Sovereign has yet to budge. That's when Jace's illusions come in. The false pirate fleet is enough to pull Sky Sovereign into the fight directly. For all their plans, the consulate fleet manages to retain the upper hand. However, the flow of battle brings both fleets into the path of ether trails in the sky. While Jace is running out of stamina, this gives Kari an idea. She drops several crates worth of ether into the sky, luring some nearby sky whales into the fight. The whales ram into Sky Sovereign with a force no skyship could muster nor withstand. The consulate's flagship is brought down by the whales' assault. This brings us up to breaking points. With the consulate fleet dispersed and the flagship brought down, the main renegade forces are flying the Heart of Kiran on a course for the consulate Aether Spire. The renegade inventors aboard the ship are finishing something that they can use to disrupt and destroy the planar bridge. Within the ship, Saheeli and Rashmi have constructed a modified Thopter that they call the Hope of Gyrapur. It contains a device called an etheric disruptor that, when crashed into the planar bridge, will utterly disrupt its operation. It should be fast enough to get past most defenses, but the consulate has turrets set up between the heart and the spire that the Thopter will be unable to evade. Meanwhile, Liliana goes ahead to engage Tezzeret in a duel, drawing his attention away from the mounting renegade assault. Pia and Chandra take a ground team to disrupt the consulate turret. They do so by unleashing a crate full of gremlins to devour its machinery. However, as incredible as their victory is, it's all for naught. Dovin Bond was able to infiltrate the Heart of Kiran and destroy the etheric disruptor of the Hope of Gyrapur before they even got it into the sky. With his act of sabotage complete and the Heart of Kiran ailing, he planeswalks away. Desperate, Chandra comes up with a plan. They modify the Hope to accommodate a person, and Chandra boards it on what would almost certainly be a suicide mission into the Spire to destroy the planar bridge utterly. Gideon refuses to let Chandra go like that, and he goes with her and hopes that he can use his indestructibility magic to protect them both. It all comes to a head in puppets. Liliana's death magic and subsequent necromancy make short work of the consulate guards between her and the Aether Spire. She finds her way to Tezzeret's chamber, where he stands before the completed planar bridge. Despite Rashmi's sabotage and subsequent escape, the bridge is indeed functional. They fight, and amidst the fighting, Tezzeret explains that he is on Kaladesh on behalf of Nicol Bolas. Liliana is able to get enough of an upper hand to force some more information out of Tezzeret. Bolas is on the plane where Liliana met the demon Razakath, which Liliana is able to surmise is Amonkhet. And just then, Chandra and Gideon crash in on the modified Hope of Gyrapur. Chandra's fire magic destroys the planar bridge, and Gideon's own magic was just enough to prevent Chandra from getting herself killed in the process. With the bridge down and his motives revealed, Tezzeret planeswalks away. We wrap up with Renewal. With Tezzeret and Dovin's disappearance, the plane-bound members of the consulate meet with renegade leadership, including Pia Nalaar, to arrange some reforms. Chandra discusses the situation with her mother before going to meet the rest of the Gatewatch at Yeheni's penthouse. With the conflict over and Yeheni's borrowed time just about up, they're getting ready for their penultimate party. However, they have some discussions among themselves before the bittersweet festivities begin. Gideon and Jace explain the concept of the Gatewatch to Ajani, who has been helping them out since meeting Chandra and Nissa in the Dun. Ajani agrees to join and takes his oath. With that settled, they discuss what to do about the Nicol Bolas situation. The one point they can agree on is that Bolas is dauntingly powerful, enough so that any fight against him will be an uphill battle. It's suggested that by now Amonkhet will be totally under his control and that he may have even created the plane to begin with. Jace is in favor of attacking as quickly as possible as to catch him off guard. However, Ajani doubts this course of action and encourages the others to find whatever allies they can. Ajani leaves, and the rest of the Gatewatch agree to go immediately to Amonkhet to face Bolas and leave Ajani out of the loop until afterwards if necessary. Ugh. Chandra and Pia have one final conversation before the Gatewatch departs for Amonkhet. They set about repairing the damage to an old mosaic mural of Kiran. Chandra is hesitant to leave, but Pia understands that duty calls her elsewhere and she was bound to leave eventually. Chandra reconvenes with the Gatewatch and has a chat with Nissa. Nissa wants to teach Chandra meditation, but as one might expect of Chandra's nature, she doesn't exactly take to it. What Chandra does do is fall asleep in the process, worn out by the rigors of the fight. Nissa, for her part, is just happy to see her get a moment of calm, and so the story comes to an end. And that's going to do it for the entirety of the Aether Revolt lore. I do hope you enjoyed the story. Be sure to let me know what you think in the comments. I will say, am I the only one who thinks they're being a real dumb just going into Amonkhet at all? I mean, it's Nicol freaking Bolas. Come on. Unreal. Anywho, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. This video is brought to you in part by TCGplayer.com. The Aether Revolt lore may be over, but you know what isn't? Modern Masters 2017 pre-orders. That's right. You guessed it. If you want the new set in all of its beautiful glory, you can pre-order a box right this second for $235 each. Best deal you're going to get, considering every card in the set is basically worth its weight in gold. Want in? Click the link, helps the channel. Win-win. Enjoy.